I'm Stephen, a 30-year-old office worker, and I live with my wife, Mary, who's 27 and a housewife. We don't have kids, and neither of our parents live with us, so it's just the two of us in our little home. Our marriage hasn't been perfect, but we've gotten along well enough, living our day-to-day lives without major issues. But then I started noticing something strange about Mary's behavior. For example, her attitude toward me had become incredibly cold, almost distant. She began wearing flashy clothes and going out late at night, sometimes even staying out overnight, and she was always clutching her mobile phone, as if waiting for someone to reach out. Her behavior was so suspicious that even though I felt guilty about it, I ended up checking her phone. The lock was there, but I knew the password from before we were married, so it wasn't hard to unlock. When I looked through it, I found undeniable proof that she was having an affair. Her phone had photos, leaving no doubt about her intimate relationship with her affair partner, Brian. As I examined further, I noticed marked dates in her schedule. These dates matched the nights she'd gone out or stayed overnight, likely times she'd been with Brian. Looking closer, I realized that they were meeting almost daily. What's worse, they even met on our anniversary and my birthday. Mary had celebrated with me at home, wishing me happiness, while secretly spending time with Brian. It left me in utter shock. It seemed the affair had been going on for months. I could see why this might have happened. I'd been busy with work, and maybe she had been feeling lonely. Perhaps that's what led her to this. By now, her heart was clearly with Brian. There were countless messages where they insulted me, expressing their love for each other. To make it worse, she'd even written about divorcing me and marrying Brian. Reading those words tore my heart apart. I'd loved her deeply. I thought of her as my most precious person, but she didn't feel the same. In despair, all I could do was cry, and from that point, I started to change. Every day, I started coming home as early as possible, making a point to help out around the house. At home, I made it a habit to engage Mary in conversation, trying to keep the dialogue going constantly. At first, she responded with cold indifference, often ignoring me completely, but I didn't give up on talking to her. I even convinced her to go on a trip with me. Though she seemed reluctant, on weekends, I took her to movies, to scenic spots, just about anywhere, hoping to spend more time together. On special occasions, I surprised Mary with gifts or prepared meals myself. Every single day, I put in my all, desperately trying to make things work for her. Even during this time, it seemed that Mary was still seeing Brian. But still, I was determined to hold on to our marriage. And gradually, it seemed to pay off as Mary slowly started to open up to me. Our conversations increased. We shared laughs and even cooked together on occasion. We began discussing where to go next on our days off or planning our future travels. She seemed genuinely excited. Little by little, I felt the distance between us closing once again. Then one day, I picked up a tabloid at a store and brought it home. After taking a shower, I returned to find Mary reading that tabloid. She noticed me and quickly placed it back on the table, giving me a smile. There must have been an article about a woman's affair, and she must have read it. Then she asked, "What would you do if I cheated on you?" My heart wavered just a bit, but I looked at her with a smile and said, "You'd never do something like that." To that, she responded playfully, "You never know." I replied, "I know, because I trust you. I trust that you'd never do something like that." In that moment, her expression stiffened a bit. I continued, "Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm a good husband to you, but I know for certain that I cherish you deeply, and I am, without a doubt, your husband." So of course, I trust you more than anyone else, because that's what being a husband means. I don't know how you feel, but I can say that I truly care for you. I love you with all my heart." As I said that, Mary suddenly began to cry. Through her tears, she managed to say, "I love you too." After that, Mary changed even more. She started initiating conversations with me frequently. Though I felt guilty, I occasionally checked her mobile phone. From seeing Brian almost every day, she had reduced their meetings to just 2 or 3 times a month. Their messages had turned into constant arguments, and I sensed that Mary's feelings were shifting back toward me. I was overjoyed. I became more confident that, in time, Mary's heart would fully return to me. And just as I had hoped, I felt her love for me growing stronger each day. I was able to win her back from her affair partner, and we were rebuilding our married life together. Or so it seemed on the surface. At that moment, Mary had no idea. She didn't realize that everything was just a part of my plan for revenge. Trust, love, there was no chance of that. For a woman who talked about raising Brian's child as mine, there's no way I could feel that. What would I do if she cheated? The answer was obvious. I would retaliate in every possible way, with absolute precision. Yes, I truly loved her once. I believed her when she said she loved me. And when I found out about the affair, I even blamed myself, thinking I'd neglected her. But that photo, that was too much. And seeing their conversations finally killed any remaining feelings I had for her. There were even messages between them about how, if she had a child, they'd raise it as mine, or else she'd divorce me, take the settlement, and marry Brian. I couldn't hold back the laughter bubbling up inside me. They're such an idiot, leaving such blatant evidence behind for me to find. I didn't feel sad or angry anymore. It was more like, what kind of creatures are they? There was nothing about them worth pitying, and nothing to forgive. Divorce was a certainty, but just divorcing them wouldn't be enough for me. I resolved to get my revenge on Mary and Brian, and immediately saved all their incriminating messages. Since Mary and Brian were meeting almost daily, I figured hiring a private detective would get me all the proof I needed in no time. But then I thought it over. If I just confronted them with the evidence, Mary's personality made it likely she'd turn it around, insult me, and walk out. Sure, I'd get the settlement money, but that wasn't enough to satisfy me. If we were going to divorce, I wanted Mary begging for forgiveness, clinging to me in tears, while I tossed the divorce papers at her with a mocking smile. To accomplish that, the plan was simple. I just needed to get her to turn her heart back to me. And so, the next day, my campaign began. I started the charm offensive on Mary, as I mentioned. But those days were pure hell. I had to speak to Mary, whom I could barely stand to look at, and invite her on trips, trying to win her over. To avoid suspicion, I even initiated intimacy at night. Usually, she'd turn me down, which was a relief, but on the rare occasion she agreed. It was agonizing. Even though I hated touching her, I'd invited it, so I had no choice but to follow through. It was the worst. Every time it was over, I'd sneak to the bathroom to throw up. Meanwhile, I had contacted the private detective agency, putting them to work gathering evidence on Mary. Since they were still meeting almost daily, it didn't even take a week before the detective got back to me with a surplus of evidence. If all cases were this straightforward, my job would be a breeze, the detective joked, but I extended the contract with them, having them keep collecting more and more proof. It cost a lot, but I didn't care. I planned to bill it all to Mary later, anyway. I also had the detective agency look into Brian. Brian was 28 years old at the time, and worked for a fairly large company. And, as expected, Brian was married. When I caught a glimpse of his home from a distance, I was surprised. Brian's wife, Stephanie, was stunningly beautiful. Mary, on the other hand, wasn't particularly pretty or cute. She was just average, maybe a bit below that. Between Mary and Stephanie, it was no contest. Stephanie was leagues ahead. How could he cheat on her with someone like Mary? I just couldn't understand it. Even so, I kept up my act, desperately trying to please Mary. I installed hidden cameras and audio recorders throughout the house. Mary frequently went out at night, so collecting data was easy. She claimed she'd joined a sports club whenever she went out in the evenings. When I checked the recorder, I overheard Mary talking to Brian on the phone about a night I'd tried to be intimate. I turned him down. Who knows? Maybe he'll start cheating soon too. Better be prepared to file for settlement. Sorry, Mary, but the one paying a settlement will be you. As the days of this painful charade went on, I started noticing a change in Mary's attitude toward me. Now when I spoke to her, she responded with a smile, and if I suggested a trip, she'd excitedly agree. And, as I mentioned before, her meetings with Brian dropped dramatically, and their conversations started turning into arguments. At that point, I was certain her heart was starting to turn back to me. So I decided it was time for the final phase of my plan. One day, after coming home, I left a tabloid with a feature on infidelity prominently on the table and went to take a shower. Knowing Mary's fondness for tabloids, I was sure she'd read it. Just as I expected, she asked what I'd do if she ever cheated on me. When I replied as I did, she cried and told me, "I love you too." I could barely contain my laughter. It was all unfolding exactly as I'd planned. A few days later, we planned a family dinner with me, Mary, my parents, Cody and Stella, and her parents, Jason and Margaret. I'd suggested it, saying it'd be nice to have everyone together for a meal. All of this had been building up to that moment. Finally, the day arrived, and we gathered at my parents' house. Everyone was there, and the meal started off in a warm, friendly atmosphere. Then the time came. I began my long-prepared act, starting to sob out of nowhere. Naturally, everyone was taken aback, scrambling to ask what was wrong. My father, who was nearby, and my mother-in-law Margaret, tried to comfort me. "What's wrong? Are you all right?" "I am sorry." In my mind, it was a flawless performance, but realizing it might seem less convincing without actual tears, I excused myself to the bathroom. Just as I'd planned, I had a bottle of eye drops sticked in my pocket. After applying them, I returned, appearing as if I'd been full on crying to anyone looking. Seeing this, everyone around me grew even more frantic, visibly worried. Finally, I began to speak. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause a scene." "That's fine, but what's going on?" my father asked. "It's just, I've had such a wonderful time having dinner with all of you, and thinking about it ending is just sad." "Ending? What do you mean?" "Dad, Mom, Jason, Margaret, I'm sorry, but I'm getting a divorce." Everyone was stunned, but the look on Mary's face was priceless. The shock hit everyone at once, and they crowded around me. Mary, in particular, looked utterly bewildered, her confusion growing by the second. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside were a few selected photographs. A while back, I started noticing something was off with Mary, but I wanted to trust her. So I decided to investigate, hoping it would ease my doubts. I felt guilty about it, but I looked into things. And this is what I found. I handed the photos over, and everyone's eyes immediately focused on them. In that moment, Mary froze. Not just Mary, everyone else in the room was frozen in shock. The photo was one of the clearest images captured by the detective, showing Mary and Brian together in a very compromising position outdoors. Out of all the evidence, I'd picked this shot specifically, the best one. With today's high-resolution cameras, both Mary and Brian's faces were crystal clear. Lost in the act, I covered my face, pretending to cry, desperately hiding my smile. Suddenly, Mary started screaming. At that moment, my father-in-law, Jason, snapped back to reality and erupted in rage. Mary. Jason's slap sent Mary sprawling, but he didn't stop there. He slapped her again and again. How could you? How could you? Meanwhile, her mother, Margaret, moved beside him, yelling, "What kind of daughter are you? What kind of daughter are you?" as she struck Mary's head repeatedly. Faced with this joint attack from her parents, Mary was utterly defenseless. Finally, my own parents came to their senses and tried to pull Mary's parents away. I, of course, kept up my sobbing act. Once everyone calmed down a bit, we began discussing what had happened. The room was thick with tension, with Mary and her parents in stunned silence, while my parents looked on with cold, unforgiving expressions. I even saw tears in my mother's eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom." But I continued without hesitation. Feeling I didn't need to pretend anymore, I dropped my act and let my face return to its natural, neutral expression. "Mary, care to explain what this is?" "No, you've got it all wrong." "Wrong? With photos this clear? What was she even saying? Explain what you mean by wrong." No. Mary was hysterical, unable to form any coherent answer. So I moved on to my next step. I stood up, holding my phone. I made a call. "Is now a good time?" "Yes, I'll be there shortly," came the reply. The unexpected turn of events left everyone in the room stunned again. A few moments later, certain people arrived at my parents' house. It was Brian, his wife, and Brian's parents. Seeing them, my parents and Mary's family were once again left in shock. As soon as they entered the house, Brian's wife and his parents offered a deep apology. "We're so sorry for the trouble my husband has caused you. No, it's not your fault. My husband's infidelity is my responsibility." Brian's parents then offered their own apology. "I'm Brian's father, and I don't know how I can ever apologize enough." "Please, you don't need to apologize." But Brian didn't apologize at all. In fact, he looked too stunned to speak. His face had gone completely pale. Seeing this, Brian's father erupted in anger. "Apologize," he shouted, grabbing Brian by the head and forcing him to bow. With tears in his eyes and a trembling voice, Brian managed an apology. Mary watched, visibly shaken, and it was truly a satisfying sight. Just a few days prior to this, I'd actually contacted Stephanie. After showing her the evidence I'd gathered, I informed her about Brian's affair. She had broken down in tears. Apparently, she'd had no idea, as Brian had never shown any signs at home. Stephanie had waited for him each night, supportive and understanding, thinking he was simply busy with work. It was a heartbreaking story. While she waited for him, he was off with Mary. After revealing my plan, I arranged for Stephanie to arrive with Brian's parents on this day, timed perfectly with my call. Having Brian present was essential for this moment, and so a full family council was called. Mary and Brian fumbled through their explanations, their words vague and evasive. Each had their father beside them, and every time they started saying something ridiculous, a slap would silence them. It took a while, but eventually, we pieced together the whole story. The two had met about a year and a half ago when Brian approached Mary while she was out walking. At first, they met in secret, but once they realized that neither Stephanie nor I had any clue about the affair, they became bolder, seeing each other almost daily. When they finished their disjointed explanations, they started to deny having any romantic feelings for each other. So I played the recording I'd prepared. Brian, I love you. I don't care about my husband anymore. Mary, I love you more than my wife. Let's have a child together. Our child. Let's get married. These were the carefully chosen snippets of their voices I had saved. The moment Brian heard them, his face went from pale to green, and Mary let out a shrill scream. Simultaneously, both fathers started slapping them again. After letting them go at it for a while, we finally got down to business. Stephanie took the lead. She stood in front of Brian, glaring at him. I think it's clear now that we can't continue as a couple. Let's get a divorce. Wait a minute. Just nod and accept it. Brian's father slapped him again as he tried to protest. While things were getting heated over there, I turned to Mary to settle our own matter. All right, let's finish this too. What do you mean? We're getting divorced, obviously. No, anything but that. Are you serious? After all this, you can actually say that? Listen, I really love you. I truly do. There's no way I can believe that. It's true. I realize just how much you mean to me. Brian doesn't matter anymore. You're the only one I care about. Oh, so I didn't matter to you until now. No, I really do love you. Of course, nobody believed a word she said. I played along as if I didn't either. But deep down, I knew the truth. I knew her words were genuine. Yes, every painful moment I had endured, every act of kindness I forced myself to show her, had all led to this. Her heart was almost entirely back with me, but I pushed her away, throwing her love back at her, trampling it underfoot. I looked down on her, and I mean really looked down on her. Beneath me, Mary sobbed, clinging to my legs, begging for forgiveness. It was exhilarating. The bitterness in my heart dissolved. With my eyes closed, I felt like I could fly, a feeling of liberation and satisfaction washing over me. Eventually, Brian and his family left my house. They decided to continue discussing things at Brian's family home. They pleaded with me not to take things to court, and I agreed to let it go at that. Brian's side was mostly resolved, but the real issue was Mary. Honestly, I think Mary was on the verge of a breakdown. She collapsed, staring blankly, with tears streaming down her face, and whenever divorce was mentioned, she'd start screaming. I remember thinking, why is she acting like the victim here? Since Mary couldn't even speak sensibly, I turned to her parents. They were straightforward, similar to Brian's side. No matter the amount, we'll pay whatever damages are owed. Mary has done enough to deserve that. But please, we beg you, don't take this to court. As disappointing as she may be, she's still our daughter. To be honest, just seeing Mary's miserable state was enough for me, so as long as they covered the detective fees and attorney consultation costs, I was satisfied. Over the next few days, I went back and forth between their house, dealing with Mary's outbursts and her parents, until we finally got the agreement signed and the divorce papers filed. Soon after, the settlement money was transferred. But then, Mary began acting like a stalker. No matter how many times her parents took her back, she kept coming after me. It was exhausting, so I eventually quit my job and moved. A friend helped me secure a new job. The pay was a bit lower, but it was more fulfilling than my previous position. Naturally, I didn't inform even Mary's parents of my new address. I canceled my mobile phone contract and only called my parents from a private number. And that brings me to where I am now. Looking back, my revenge on Mary ended up being far more effective than I anticipated. Mary's obsession forced me to move away, and her parents were left struggling, as they kept her at their home. I do feel a bit sorry for them. I couldn't forgive Mary, but I held no grudge against her parents. Still, being free of Mary has given me a deep sense of satisfaction. As for Brian, he was swiftly divorced and, from what I hear, disowned by his family. Apparently, Stephanie is suing him for a substantial settlement. With those payments, Brian is now living a hard life each month. I heard all this from Stephanie. You see, she and I have started seeing each other occasionally. We're both in no rush for anything like marriage, but we're in a good place. Now I'm grateful Mary cheated. Otherwise, I'd have been stuck with her for life. Granted, I'm not without fault for neglecting her, which may have led her to cheat. But I still have no interest in being with someone capable of falling that low. If loneliness was Mary's issue, then perhaps this outcome is what's best for her too. It's all over now. Stephanie and I were free to live our lives as we choose.
Can they just sleep on the floor since they're dirty? My son's wife, Linda, said this with an ugly laugh. Beside her, my son Michael also had a disdainful smile. You two can sit on top of some cardboard. Then, she pointed to a piece of cardboard carelessly placed nearby, as if she was dealing with something filthy. I felt a deep revulsion for them both, no matter that they were my own children. I couldn't tolerate it anymore. Estrangement. That word flashed through my mind. Shall we go home? My husband James said, turning around, as if he had read my thoughts. Yes. I don't want to stay here any longer. I replied immediately to his words, eager to get away from these two as soon as possible. It seems we're not welcome, so we'll be leaving. And we'll be estranging ourselves from Michael and the others. That's totally fine with me. And with that, we left without even entering their house, without seeing our grandchildren's faces. A few hours later, while having coffee with James, we enjoyed a peaceful moment. Then, Michael called James's mobile phone. James glanced at Michael's name and chose to ignore the call. Watching this, I smiled, thinking Michael must be facing a hard time now. I am Mary, a 51-year-old working mother with a part-time job. I have a husband, James, and 2 sons. James and I met through our parents' introduction. I was drawn to James, who was kind and serious, and he liked my gentle nature, so we started dating immediately. A few years later, we got married. Soon after, we were pregnant with our first child, Michael. You've done well, Mary. Thank you so much, he said to me with tears in his eyes. Not only him, but also my in-laws praised me, delighted that their first grandchild was a boy, saying, "You did well." 2 years later, we had our second child, Daniel. Both boys, they kept us busy with their energetic antics. I got a perfect on the test again. Wow, that's amazing, Michael. You've worked hard on your studies, good job. As he grew, he became a child recognized by everyone as exceptional. He studied diligently and had excellent athletic abilities. Meanwhile, Daniel was. I heard you helped a kid who was being bullied. You're such a kind soul, Daniel. Thanks, Mom. I just had to help them, no matter what. He grew up to be a kind-hearted person, always ready to lend a hand to those in trouble and gentle towards animals. While cherishing their different personalities, we frequently discussed as a family and continued to watch over the paths the two of them would take. Both left home at the time of going to college. Being alone at home feels so unsettling. Maybe I should start a part-time job. That sounds good. It's worth trying something new. Afterward, freed from child rearing, I consulted with James and decided to start a part-time job. I began working at a nearby supermarket, which seemed to suit me. The work environment was pleasant, and I enjoyed my job. It's great you found something you enjoy. James said that, looking at me happily. Moreover, he started to take on more household chores, saying, "We're a dual-income couple now." He had always tried to help out by doing what he could, seeing me run ragged by our sons. So, I told him, but James just smiled warmly. "You've done more than enough already. You don't have to go to such lengths. I love you, Mary, and I want to be useful." Without any embarrassment, he expressed his feelings. I am grateful to have him and our family as we live our peaceful, everyday life. One day, "I'm coming over to the house." Michael sent such a message out of the blue. Surprised by the suddenness, both James and I, being off work and at home. Therefore, we sent Michael our consent and decided to wait. It's unusual for him to reach out like this. Indeed. He didn't even show his face when Daniel was getting married. After leaving home, Michael rarely returned or even contacted us. At most, we informed him last year that Daniel was getting married, to which he just replied, "Understood," and didn't attend the wedding. Can't get in touch with Michael. Haven't you heard anything? No. I've only received understood message from him as well. Both James and I, and even Daniel himself, couldn't get a reply about attending the wedding from Michael, despite numerous attempts. After many attempts by Daniel, he said he's too busy with work to attend. To miss his own brother's wedding? He said, "I won't waste my time for a useless brother." Such a disrespectful message was sent. Seeing that, both James and I sighed deeply. Michael had always looked down on Daniel. Michael, excellent in academics and sports. Michael is truly amazing. Michael is our pride. Such was the adoration he received from his grandparents. Watching him play outside. Such a boyish spirit is good to see. Our grandson is just as expected. They often expressed such views. On the other hand, Daniel, who enjoyed reading and quietly spent time in his room. With such nice weather, to stay in the corner of a room. Such a gloomy child. Frowning, the in-laws said that. I couldn't believe their words and always argued back. If you say such things, I won't let you see your grandchildren. James was clear about it, and upon hearing that, the in-laws who wanted to see Michael quickly apologized. Michael was also fond of them, saying, "I want to see Grandpa and Grandma." So we reluctantly let them meet. Daniel, on the other hand, was close to my parents. I love being in Grandpa's study and talking with them. My dad is also a reader, with lots of books in his study, and Daniel would scrutinize which book to read with sparkling eyes every time we visited. And he would happily share his thoughts with him. That's why Daniel preferred going to my parents' house over the in-laws. Are we going to Grandpa's house next time? Wonder which book I'll read. But I want to go to other grandparents' house. Last time we went to my parents' house because Michael insisted on it. This time, we're going to Mary's parents' house. Both of our parents' homes were within cycling distance, and we tried to visit them equally. Oh, did you go to grandparents' place? Yeah. I went to return a book. Michael seems to be at Grandpa's house too. As they grew up, both started to go on their own. Surely, the in-laws were spoiling Michael and bad-mouthing Daniel. Even if we tried to blame them, there was no proof. Did you go to your father's place again? No. I was at a friend's house near there. Michael also denied it, saying, I didn't go. I haven't seen the in-laws. However, he was undoubtedly influenced by the in-laws, and developed a disdainful attitude towards Daniel. Every time he said something oppressive about Daniel, we scolded him, but it seemed futile. What's wrong? Remembering the past, I inadvertently sighed. James asked with concern. It's nothing. Just wondering what he wants. Hopefully, it's not trouble. He nodded at my words. And 4 hours after the scheduled time. He's here. You're quite late. You were probably just lazing around anyway. Unabashed, Michael entered the house. Following him was a woman. While we were puzzled by the sudden visit, the two quickly sat down on the living room sofa. Michael, who is this? My wife, Linda. We got married. The words uttered by Michael shocked us so much that we exclaimed loudly. Not we're getting married, but we got married as it was announced after the fact. Normally, you'd come before getting married. We were in a hurry. Apparently, Linda is pregnant. Now that they mention it, Linda's belly does seem large. So, she wasn't suffering from morning sickness, and we decided to have the wedding before it became noticeable. I understand the situation, but why didn't you tell us? And we weren't invited to the wedding. At our question, Michael sneered unpleasantly. We didn't want to invite such shabby people to our glamorous ceremony. We were stunned by his words. What did Michael just say? Shabby? Us? Exactly as Michael said, truly shabby indeed. Linda said, laughing mockingly as if to ridicule us. Feeling sickened by such behavior. Linda comes from a wealthy family. Her father is a CEO, and I work at his company. Her mother is from a noble family too, so they're in a different class than us. Michael said mockingly. I wonder why he looks down on his own upbringing so much. Then, what do you want by coming here? James asked with a cold voice. He must be angry at being ridiculed by them. I told you, Linda is pregnant. Unlike Daniel's wife who can't have children. Daniel's wife, Susan, has been his childhood friend who lived nearby. They started dating in high school and got married right after graduating from college. Susan apparently has a condition that makes it difficult for her to get pregnant. I'm fine with that. Susan is the only one for me. And having Daniel is more than enough for me. They had discussed this matter several times. It's Daniel and Susan's issue. As long as the two of them are okay with it, we're not particularly bothered. Yet, bringing this up all of a sudden made me frown. Unlike the worthless Daniel's wife, Linda will give you grandchildren. You should at least show some gratitude, right? Speak clearly. What do you want? A baby gift? It's not just that. Visiting the house and helping out is the role of a mother-in-law, isn't it? Michael said, with Linda joining him in a nasty grin. They're indirectly telling me to come over and do household chores. Then, James silently stood up. It would be an honor to be of use to you. Once James was out of sight, Linda started saying that. Right. Since you'll get to hold your grandchild, it's only natural you do as much. Linda and Michael agreed, leaving me puzzled. If it were Susan, I'd gladly help. But I don't want to assist people who look down on others. Just as I was about to say something, James returned with an envelope in hand. Take this and leave. My wife has a part-time job and doesn't have the time to care for you. Besides, if your family is so prestigious, hire a professional housekeeper. James said this while glaring at them. Michael seemed upset by these words, but took the envelope without saying anything. What a waste of time. Muttering, Michael and Linda left. Watching them go, I sighed deeply, pondering the future. I thought I was careful, but did I raise him wrong? As I felt uneasy about Michael and Linda's attitude, a notification sound came from my mobile phone. It was a message from Susan. "We're planning a trip with Daniel. Would you like to join us?" A lovely invitation message with cute stickers. Feeling healed by it, I replied, "Thank you for the invitation. Would you like to come over for dinner?" They were delighted by the invite, so we decided to have Daniel and Susan over for dinner. "Thank you for inviting us today. I love Mary's cooking, so I'm really happy." We welcomed them at the agreed time and had a lively dinner, during which we talked about Michael and Linda. "That wife, could she possibly be?" Susan muttered, having heard our story. Apparently, Susan works at the same company as Linda's father. So, she knew of Linda's existence, though in a different department. According to Susan, Linda is infamously known for the bad reasons. "I did hear she was going on maternity leave," Susan mentioned. Daniel seemed thoughtful beside her. "Thanks for letting me know. They might contact me next. It's good to be prepared." Indeed, if Michael couldn't make me a housekeeper, he might next tell Daniel. Send Susan over as a housekeeper. If Susan gets outed as an employee at the same company, they might say, "Do it if you don't want to be fired." So, Daniel, make sure you protect her. Daniel nodded firmly at his words. Several months later, I receive another message from Michael on my mobile phone. "Our child has been born. So, we're having a baby gift event at our new home. We're inviting you too as a courtesy." Such a condescending message was sent. Honestly, I don't feel like going. But he is my son, after all. "Well, I guess we'll attend, but only out of obligation." Right. We'll decide our future relationship based on their attitude at the baby gift event. We agreed to participate in the baby gift and visited their new home using the address provided. "Welcome." "Ah, so you did came. It sounds like you're surprised we actually showed up." Greeted by Linda and Michael at the door. James responded to their greeting, which was met with an insincere smile and, "Not at all. Well, come in." But upon entering, there's no sight of our grandchild. Asking them about it, we're told the child is out with Linda's parents. Please wait in the living room until the parents return. However, as we were about to sit down, Linda stopped us. "Wait! That's my parents' seat." "Then where should we sit?" Linda pointed to the floor in response to my question. "Do you mind sitting on the floor since you're so dirty?" She said this with a disgusting laugh, with Michael also smirking unpleasantly beside her. "You two can sit on cardboard," pointing to a carelessly placed piece of cardboard nearby, as if we were something dirty. Such behavior deeply disgusted me. As much as he is my own child, I can no longer tolerate it. Disownment. That word crossed my mind. "Should we leave?" James, sensing my thoughts, turned to me and suggested. "Yes. I don't want to stay here any longer." I immediately agreed with his words, because I wanted to get away from these two as soon as possible. "Since we're obviously not welcome, we'll leave. And we'll be disowning both of you." That's totally fine with me. And so, we left without even entering their house, without seeing our grandchild's face. Once home, I blocked Michael's contact. Immediately, I called Daniel and told him about what had happened. Daniel and his family were also invited to the same baby gift event. I thought I'd warn them before they arrived at the new home. "Got it. Thanks for letting me know." He responded coldly and hung up. Daniel resembles me in appearance, but his demeanor is all James. Normally calm, he treasures Susan deeply. But once he gets angry, he's uncontrollable. Michael had once angered Daniel and suffered terribly because of it. Forgetting that, He's probably getting ahead of himself. Let's have some coffee, shall we? Sure, I'd like that. Several hours later, James and I spent a leisurely time drinking coffee. Then, Michael calls James's mobile phone. James looks at Michael's name briefly before deciding to ignore it. Watching him, I can't help but think Michael is probably facing a tough time right now, and I smiled at the thought. Hey, where are we going for our next trip? Let's go somewhere famous this time. James responds with a smile to my question. And time flows by leisurely. Then, I get a message from Susan. What's up? It's from Susan. She's asking if she can come over now. Is that okay? Of course, let her. After giving our consent, Daniel and Susan arrive a few minutes later, both grinning broadly. You two seem very cheerful. Looks like you've had quite the rampage. Yes. Oh, I recorded it, so you must watch. Responding to our words, Susan shows us the video on her mobile phone with a smile. The recording starts with Daniel ringing the doorbell. The door's unlocked, just come in. Hearing that, Daniel and Susan enter the house. Reaching the living room. Wait, aren't you the famous novelist? A man and woman, presumably Linda and her parents, looked at Daniel's face in surprise. Daniel, a book lover, had become a novelist. His work won a Newcomers Award, and there were talks of media adaptations. He had appeared on TV due to this. The other family must have recognized him from TV. Seeing such a person suddenly show up seemed to shock them. What? Daniel is the novelist everyone's talking about? Not only Linda and her parents were surprised, but Michael, his brother, was too. Michael and Daniel hadn't seen each other in years. For Michael, Daniel was still the same as in his memories, and even seeing his changed appearance on TV didn't ring a bell. Since he only published under a pen name, they didn't realize it was him until they met in person. I'm a fan of yours, Linda said with a beaming smile. Linda's parents, Brian and Karen, also expressed their joy. We're delighted to have such a popular novelist in the family. What? Become family with someone who ridicules their parents? I don't think so, Daniel told them with a very nice smile. Suddenly, the other family froze. Then, it was Daniel's turn. I know what you said about our parents. You made quite a mockery of them. His words caused Linda's parents to frown. Unaware, Michael muttered back. So you admit you're really shabby? What's so shabby? Are you saying your family is superior? He coldly countered. Even through the video, Michael's discomfort under Daniel's intense gaze was palpable, and he averted his eyes. Dad and Mom loved us equally, recognized our individuality, and supported us. Yet, you always been complaining. That's spoiled rotten by grandparents who indulged his every whim. Daniel didn't let Michael get a word in, continuing to speak. Our reprimands, thinking of Michael, spoken behind our backs. Supporting Michael's desired university and arranging tutorials as he wished. We didn't make him struggle for tuition and gave him plenty of pocket money. Realizing how much we were watched over moved me. You acted as if it was all due to you, but it wasn't. Our parents helped Michael out of genuine love. I can't understand Michael's disdain for them. Daniel spoke non-stop. Michael was left speechless by his words. Then, he turned his gaze to Linda's parents, continuing. And you? What kind of upbringing have you given your daughter? Mocking someone's parents, not inviting them to the wedding, only announcing a pregnancy, and then demanding money and care. Michael and Linda looked troubled by these words. Before they could say anything, Brian spoke up. Michael, I was told by you that my parents are bad influences on their children and didn't pay for education. It seems Linda's parents were told by Michael that they only exploit me and have never done anything parental. That's why he always stayed with his grandparents. Not inviting them to the wedding was also because they might cause trouble and inconvenience others. Hearing Michael's explanation, Daniel deeply sighed. Still painting the parents as the villains, huh? What exactly have those two exploited from you, Michael? The reason you went to Grandpa and Grandma's was because they spoiled him and gave him allowance, Daniel said, causing Linda's parents to exchange looks. If you've read my novel, you'd know who's more credible, right? It's about my gratitude towards my parents and overcoming the mockery from my grandparents. Linda's parents nod at Daniel's words. Beside them, Linda makes a puzzled face. Really? Just from that, it's clear Linda hasn't read Daniel's book. How you can that you're my fan who even haven't read my book? He murmurs, sighing again. Then, he turns to us, or rather, to Susan, who is recording. Let's go. Staying here any longer is pointless. Yes, let's. The video ends there. Daniel, well said. You're my pride, James says after watching, and Daniel smiles happily. Immediately after finishing the video, loud noises came from the entrance. Why are you ignoring my calls? What have you done? Michael and Linda enter, yelling. Ah, that's right, I had given Michael a spare key. They must have used it to get in. What do you want? Daniel frowns at the noisy pair, ignoring them. Susan, would you like a refill on your coffee? Oh, no, thank you, don't bother. Don't be shy. James and I ignore the two, surprising Daniel and Susan. Meanwhile, Michael and Linda, oblivious to our reaction, start ranting. It's all because of that woman. I got scolded by Dad. It seems something Susan left behind has put them in a tight spot. That parting gift was an internal investigation at the company. That's right. Because of what was written, my path to becoming the next CEO is now closed. Apparently, not only Linda, but Michael's reputation was also bad. Initially, Michael worked diligently, but after marrying Linda, he became arrogant, claiming, I'm the next CEO. It seems the people around him could no longer keep up with him. You've really done it now. Linda was known for flirting with men at work and pushing her work onto them. If anyone disobeyed, she used her status as the CEO's daughter to pressure them into resignation. Thus, no one dared to refuse her requests. Furthermore, she would harass any woman who even slightly stood out. They left behind documents recording their deeds. Moreover, Linda's choice in men was questionable. But whether that child is Michael's, I really can't say. Leaving those words, Susan had left their house. Hearing Daniel and Susan's story, and presented with evidence, the other parents were furious. They ousted the two from the company, declaring, You're disowned. If things stay this way, we'll be kicked out of that house too. Even the child might be taken away by my parents. Apparently, Michael's new house was a baby gift from Brian. From the level of their anger, it seemed likely they would lose the new house as well. If that happens, Linda and I won't be able to raise the grandchild, was the concern. It's getting colder recently. I can't wait to warm up with a trip. Right. By the way, Mary and I were discussing where to go. Do you have any place in mind? Ignoring Michael and Linda, we continued to speak cheerfully to Daniel and Susan. At that moment, Michael looked at us for the first time, puzzled. Dad? Mom? We were thinking, since it's a special occasion, why not go somewhere famous? If you two don't mind, how about staying overnight? Michael spoke to us in a hurried manner, but we ignored him. After a brief struggle and receiving no response, let's go. Staying here is pointless. Wait! What? With shoulders slumped, Linda and Michael left. We need to change the locks, James muttered as the door closed. Daniel and Susan exchanged glances. How about moving in with us? It might be better, considering they could come back. Apparently, they had been considering living together for a while. We joyfully accepted their offer, sold this house, and moved in with them. Thanks to that, we no longer had to deal with Michael and Linda's disturbances and enjoyed a peaceful life. Soon after, they both were supposedly fired from the company. The president himself came to apologize. I'm sorry for not noticing my daughter's foolishness, he said. We were also apologized to by Linda's parents. They regretted misunderstanding us and not greeting us properly. Perhaps her parents weren't bad people. However, Brian being busy with his company and Karen running her beauty salon, they didn't spend much time with Linda. As a result, Linda developed such a personality. When they came to apologize, I asked how the two were doing. Michael and Linda, kicked out of the new house, went to their old house but found it sold. Stunned, they somehow managed to rent an apartment. Then, they started job hunting to make a living, but in such circumstances, they couldn't raise a child. Therefore, Linda's parents considered taking the child in but declined, saying, "We are not qualified to raise a child." So, it was decided that Daniel and Susan would take the child in. Fortunately, the child, William, truly is our grandchild, having Michael's blood. It seems they intended to push the childcare onto me from the start. They usually left it to Karen or professionals. I'll raise him well, Susan said, holding William lovingly. Daniel was also eager to participate in raising him. Taken in by them, he is bound to be happy. I plan to support them as much as I can. Sometime later, Daniel received a message from Michael. Now I understand how foolish I've been. Following this incident, Michael and Linda, whose relationship soured, divorced. Becoming lonely made Michael reflect on his actions. But regretting now is too late. When I said William and his parents wouldn't meet him, he was visibly disappointed. However, his repentance didn't seem genuine. According to Daniel, his attempt to show a changed heart seemed more like a plea for help for himself. Michael hasn't changed. So, we can just leave him be. Indeed, my parents influenced Michael negatively, but he's old enough to take responsibility. We won't reach out to him anymore. Thus, he was abandoned by us. He vanished into the entertainment district, having no one to rely on. But that's none of our concern anymore. As for Linda, despite being disowned by her parents and divorced from Michael, she couldn't lower her standard of living and ended up in debt. Unlike Michael, she didn't have our contact information, and being disliked by those around her, she couldn't seek help from anyone. Eventually, she was forced into tough jobs introduced by debt collectors. Well, it's none of our business, I muttered, watching William sleep in my arms. Several years later. Looking forward to the trip. I never thought it would be postponed this much, James replied, nodding to James's words about the trip we had promised back then. We had just taken in William and were busy with moving and other things, so it had been postponed. Right when we thought we'd settled down, Susan got pregnant. We all celebrated that time. When William was about 3, Susan's pregnancy was discovered. Having 2 grandchildren filled us with joy. And now that Emily, William's sister, has grown a bit, we could finally go on that trip. Grandma, Grandpa, I'm excited about the trip. While talking with James, William runs over with a beaming smile. And we returned the smile to William, who talked with such happiness. William, you know you shouldn't run, right? He is full of energy. Daniel and Susan approach, saying this. In Daniel's arms is Emily, who reaches out her hand towards William as they get closer. The sight of the siblings getting along so well warmed our hearts. Then, shall we go? We nod at Daniel's words. And we start walking with smiles on our faces. There might be many challenges ahead. But I'm confident we can overcome anything as a family, supporting each other. What a stench so ludicrous drenched in wine! My oldest son's wife, with devilish eyes, mocks me loudly while I lie bedridden with fever. Incredibly, the she-devil had the audacity to drench me with wine, while I'm sick. In my days, her cruel actions and words pierced my heart. We're heading back to our own place soon, so make sure you clean up before we get back, don't leave a speck of dust. Her arrogant comment made me want to suspect if she was possessed by a devil. But this attitude of hers isn't anything new. Since we started living together, she has always made me feel like an outsider, always playing mean tricks on me. Wow, that's lame, Catherine. You're so mean. Even my eldest son, joining in on his wife's behavior, claps his hands and bursts into laughter behind her. I wonder how he grew up to be like this. That's fine, I'm not bothered by this. So, what about it? You'll clean up, right? Not like you have any other choice. She looks down at me with a smirk. Throughout this, she continues to taunt me with phrases like, "How filthy!" "Yes. I'll clean up." Unable to speak up, I reluctantly answered, biting my lips. Then I'll leave it to you. If it's not clean, I'm not responsible for what happens to this house. I understand. I was unable to talk back because of my fever, and I grudgingly replied as she wished. But my blood was boiling with anger. I was no longer able to forgive my eldest son and his wife. My name is Mary. I'm a 71-year-old homemaker. My husband Bob is a farmer. He's a bit of a stickler and not much of a talker, but I know he loves his family deeply, and I believe we've built a good relationship over the years as a married couple. Thanks to that, as a full-time housewife, I lead a peaceful life at home. Is what I wish I could say, but I live with my eldest son and his wife. I have 2 children, my eldest son John, who is turning 42 this year, and my second son James, who is 38. John got married late, and he brought his wife, Catherine, home only last year. Catherine seems to be working in a nightclub, and her flashy clothes and hairstyle shocked me at first. She's 40 this year, but she does look younger. She must be leveraging her looks in her work. She and my jobless eldest son, who is still working part-time jobs, seem to be a perfect match. My second son, on the other hand, is still single and works as an office worker. Unlike John, who has an attitude, James is a gentle and kind child. I sometimes worry that he might not be popular with girls because he's too kind, but that's also one of James's charms, so I want him to stay that way. Being blessed with 2 children, I wish I could say that my life was smooth sailing, but my peaceful life is now threatened by my eldest son and his wife. All this started from the moment I met my eldest son's wife. 1 year ago, Catherine, my eldest son's wife, came to our house for the first time. At that time, my husband was out at a gathering with neighboring farmers, and I was alone at home. To begin with, John hadn't said anything about getting married, so I was surprised when he suddenly said, "I'm bringing my girlfriend home today." Furthermore, when I asked for more details, Catherine was not just a girlfriend but someone he had already married a month ago. I was dumbfounded and scolded my eldest son, who had registered their marriage without even telling me about it. "You should have at least brought her to greet us before getting married, right? Have you even met her parents? When did all this even happen?" "Oh, give me a break. I'm not a kid. I don't need to consult my parents for everything. Stop nagging me." Looking at my eldest son's condescending attitude, as if he was belittling me, I wondered where I had gone wrong raising him. As for parenting, I've done about the same for both John and James, so it's surprising that they turned out to have such different personalities. Anyway, please get your life sorted here on out. Now, I don't even know how to greet your wife's parents. Yeah. I was slightly annoyed at the nonchalant tone in his response, as if he wasn't taking me seriously at all. But I swallowed my anger, knowing that it would get us nowhere if we kept arguing. As planned, John's wife came to our house later, immediately shouting, "Wow, this house is so cramped!" Indeed, our house is not spacious. We bought this second-hand house 35 years ago, did some interior remodeling and started living here. All our friends were building new houses, so ours looked quite dated compared to others, and the old-fashioned architecture was quite apparent. But I loved our house. Thanks to my husband's hard work, we were able to buy a house that, while not our dream home, was cozy enough. We made adjustments when remodeling, while taking in our layout into consideration. Thanks to this, we have a space that is perfect for our lifestyle. John's wife mocked our house the moment she stepped her foot in here. And I just couldn't believe how she had the nerve to say such a thing. "Dirty," is all she says. John, who lived with us in this house up until 15 years ago, joined in her laughter. He's renting an apartment and living there now, but doesn't he have fond memories of this house too? This was surprise to me. But I guess it's fitting for an old lady like you. She just met me for the first time, but glared at me and made snide remarks. I was flabbergasted. Not only did she mock our house, but she even had the audacity to speak ill of her mother-in-law. "I'm sorry our house is so small." As you can imagine, the time after that was hell. I was so shocked by the words from John's wife that I was barely able to serve tea or sweets, and the couple just stared at me in disbelief. "Hey, at least be prepared to welcome us." Poor Catherine, you gotta welcome her with love. Spilling tea, are you a newbie waitress or something? LOL. I endured the scene by plugging my ears to block Catherine's laughter. I'm sorry. I don't want this daughter-in-law to ever set foot in our house again. I prayed for him to never bring her over again. However, my prayer was never heard, and about half a year ago, John called me. It was bad news. Starting next week, Catherine and I will be living with you, okay? Live together? Why? Why not? There's no mortgage payment left for your house anymore, right? So it doesn't matter if one or two more people move in. You're not losing anything. I couldn't comprehend what John was saying. I was totally against living together with them. People always talk about mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues, and I bet John's wife would hate to live together, too. Above all, I didn't think I could live a normal life with my John's wife. I don't want you guys to move in here. I don't want any problems anyway. And first of all, has Catherine agreed to this? Catherine says she's fine with it. I just got an okay from her yesterday. So, we'll be moving in next week. Wait, just a minute. The call ended before I could reply. From next week, John and his wife are moving in here? I shivered at the thought. That night, I decided to discuss it with my husband. I don't see a problem with it. Excuse me? I'm fine as long as Catherine is fine with it. They can help with living expenses after all. I doubt that though. My husband, oblivious to Catherine's personality, was down to have them live with us. Our daughter-in-law herself said she's fine with it. So I understand why my husband isn't opposed to all this. But the problem is that our daughter-in-law can be a rather insensitive individual. If my husband is fine with it, then I guess it can't be helped. It's our son's request after all, I couldn't quite turn him away. So I told him that we agreed on letting him and his wife move in here. But in return, you must contribute to our household expenses. Got it? Yeah, I know. His nonchalant response made me wonder if this was going to be okay, but he's already in his 40s. I shouldn't have trouble having him pay for our expenses. And so, half a year ago, my eldest son and his wife moved in with us. At first, contrary to my fears, both of them were quiet and kept to themselves. I was fed up with how they barely helped around the house, but seeing my son go to work during the day and his wife doing the same at night, I refrained from meddling. However, both my son and his wife were living on opposite schedules, and I wondered how they managed to keep their marriage going. But it wasn't my place to pry into their business. While they stayed with us, the couple hardly ever talked to my husband. Given their work schedules and lifestyle differences, it was somewhat understandable, and my husband never took the initiative to strike up a conversation either. And like that, the first month passed without any major issues. It was around this time that I approached my son about our living expenses. Living expenses? You can't seriously think I have that kind of money. What? What he said was different from what we had agreed on before, so I was taken aback. Why should Catherine and I have to pay you? We don't have a mortgage to pay off, so don't be so stingy. With that, he left for his part-time job. Oh God. Even though I had my doubts about living together, I reluctantly agreed, only under the condition that they would help with our living expenses. Not contributing even a cent is unacceptable. I told the same thing to Catherine, but her response was, "Huh? Get the money from John." She didn't take me seriously either. I finally realized that I had been played by my son and his wife. From there, things only got worse. Perhaps because they were annoyed by me being a housewife, they started making snide remarks at me whenever they got the chance. Must be nice being old. You can live freely on your pension without having to work. That's right. You should at least do our laundry since you're not working. They said that I have it easy since I don't work. And that I should do all the chores since I'm a housewife. But they wouldn't contribute to our living expenses. Their comments were absurd. I tried to avoid their complaints as much as possible and endured their behavior. To make matters worse, they would always bully me when my husband was not around. They know that I'm getting old, and I don't have the energy or the will to fight back. When will this old hag leave? It'd be better without her around. Even Catherine, who used to mock this house for being small, was making comments. Their bullying didn't stop at verbal abuse. Hey, what's with this new shelf? I replaced that old, shabby dresser. It was so outdated. This one is cuter anyway. To my astonishment, they had thrown away our family heirlooms and replaced them with a new furniture while I was out. Worse, they'd chosen flashy, foreign-style furnishings that didn't match our aesthetic in the slightest. Oh no, my mother's mementos! I fell into a state of despair when I saw that they had even thrown out my dresser that I cherished, and the chest I had inherited from my mother. Why would you throw away others' stuff without even asking? Even I lost my temper at this point and raised my voice in anger, but they were unbothered. It's no big deal. What's the point of holding on to mementos? With every change of furniture, I was overwhelmed by the horrifying feeling that my home was being taken over. And what made me even angrier was why they didn't contribute to the household expenses at all, but they had money to buy furniture. My husband was busy with work and didn't have time to worry about what was going on at home, so he just watched John and Catherine in silence. This is our home too, so we can do whatever we want, right? I felt an inexplicable fear toward Catherine, who smiled smugly at me. As these incidents piled up, I was mentally drained. Then, as if to add insult to injury, my husband collapsed from overwork. This happened just a month ago. He needs to rest for a while. I was shocked by the doctor's words. I felt guilty for not noticing my husband's exhaustion because I was too busy dealing with John and his wife. Is that so? I'm sorry, Mary. No, I'm sorry I didn't notice. You need to rest, honey. I'll be back as soon as possible. My husband said that, but his condition didn't improve much, and a month has passed since then. As expected, the harassment from John and his wife worsened while my husband was away. They broke dishes, pushed me from behind and made me fall. It was blatant physical abuse, but I was too worried about my husband to think about myself. And then, the day finally came. I was doing laundry as usual in the morning. That's when I began to feel feverish. My head felt slightly painful. I measured my temperature just in case, and it was 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. A mild fever. I was taken aback because I hadn't had a fever in years. I was probably worn out from everything I was going through. I was afraid I might faint if I continued to work while standing, so I laid down on the couch in the living room. I should be fine for a few minutes. Since my son and his wife were still asleep, I thought no one would complain about me lying down for a bit. However, the living room door opened. John and his wife entered with large suitcases. "Mom, what are you doing there? Hurry up and do the laundry." "Wow, she's so lazy for a full-time housewife. Pathetic." "Well, I just have a slight fever today. I'll get up as soon as I rest for a bit, so wait." "No, we can't wait. We're about to go out." Indeed, I could guess from their large luggage that they were about to go somewhere. But where are they going? "We're going to visit my parents' house." "Oh, I see. Safe travels. Before you go, could you bring me some water? My throat is all dry." I felt relieved when I heard that they were going to visit Catherine's parents, and I asked them to bring me some water. Even if they were mean to me, I thought they would at least do that much. "Huh. Do it yourself." "Well, fine. I'll bring it to you." Catherine, muttering under her breath, disappeared into the kitchen. She was back after a while, and out of the blue, splash. Something splashed on my face, and I was left speechless. "Ha ha 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 ha. You reek. So funny, all covered in wine." Catherine, with the eyes of a demon, looks down on me and bursts into loud laughter. She had splashed wine on me while was laying down sick. With my consciousness fading, her heartless words and deeds pierce my heart. "We're going back home now, so finish all the chores by we get back. Don't leave a speck of dust." Her comments are so harsh, I am convinced that she's possessed by a devil. Wow, that's lame, Catherine. You're so mean. Even my eldest son, joining in on his wife's behavior, claps his hands and bursts into laughter behind her. How did he end up like this? He's not my child anymore. Now I'm sure of it. "No problem, this is nothing. So, you're gonna clean the house, right? Not like you have a choice anyway." She looks down on me. Dirty is all she says. "Yes, I'll do all the cleaning." Unable to fight against her, I replied, biting my lips. "Humph, the house better be cleaned by the time we get back. If not..." Okay. I was down with fever, so I reluctantly agreed to her. But deep down, my blood was boiling with anger. I couldn't forgive my eldest son and his wife anymore. Catherine, who had splashed wine on my face, hastily left the house with John. The bitter frustration and the strong smell of wine made me grimace. But my condition only worsened as time passed, and I couldn't even get up to wash my face. Lying down unable to do anything, right when my consciousness began to fade, I heard the front door open. "I'm home." The familiar voice made me open my eyes in surprise. "Honey." "Mary! What happened?" My husband, seeing me lying weakly on the sofa, immediately rushed over to me. "What's this smell? Did something happen?" "Catherine and John did this to me." Upon seeing my beloved husband's face suddenly, I couldn't contain my emotions, and I confessed everything that the two had been doing to me. It had been a while since the last time I saw my husband. In the middle of it all, I couldn't hold back my tears and started crying like a child. "I see. I'm sorry, I never noticed." "No, I'm sorry for not telling you properly. But why did you come back?" "The doctor told me I could go home because my condition has improved. I wanted to see you as soon as possible." "I see. Thank you, honey." After that, my husband gently wiped my wine-soaked face with a damp towel and carried me to the bed. He tucked me under a warm blanket and even prepared a light meal and drink that was easy on my stomach, which brought tears to my eyes.
I can't stand it anymore. Although they are our son and his wife, I can't tolerate them anymore. They don't contribute to the household expenses, and on top of that, they are just awful.
You're right. After hearing about all they did, I completely understand you.
We can't live in this house anymore.
My husband and I were enraged. We contemplated on how to fight back against John and his wife. Ideally, we'd like to kick them out of this house, but they wouldn't leave just because we asked them to. So we had no other choice but to take a different approach. To put it blunt, our plan was a forceful operation. It was something we had been slowly putting into action. Finally, the time had come for us to execute it. Surely, it would be a very effective strategy against them, who had constantly ridiculed me and my home. I met my husband's eyes and nodded.
It's showtime.
Over the course of several weeks, we carried out our plan, and things had finally settled. One day, we were relaxing on our living room sofa when my phone rang. It was from John, I chuckled. Finally, the moment had come. Swallowing hard, I answered the phone, trying to calm my pounding heart.
Hey, you old hag, what the hell is going on here?
Startled by the sudden barrage of abuse from the other end of the phone, I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear.
Well, what's the matter? Aren't you at Catherine's parents' place? We just got back home. But why is our house gone?
John's frantic voice was so funny to me, I struggled to hold back my laughter.
Well, you remember how Catherine told me to have the house cleaned by the time you guys got back? So we did. We cleaned the whole house. Not a speck of dust left, right?
Yes, I took Catherine's word and used it against them. Sold the house and moved out, leaving nothing behind. It was something we had been considering ever since my husband collapsed from fatigue. We were getting older. Farming is labor demanding. We considered giving it up and living out our retirement years in peace. I thought my workaholic husband would oppose to the idea, but he was so affected by his collapse that he readily agreed to my suggestion. We always had inquiries about having our land for sale, so we were able to sell it with no problem. Things moved quickly after that, and before we knew it, our house was completely gone. We loved our previous house, but it was much easier for us to sell it off than plan about who to pass it down to. We moved to a rental apartment in the neighboring state. We thought it would be hard to take out a mortgage for a house at our age, so we agreed that a rental would be fine. And now, I'm on the phone with John from our new home.
What the hell did you do? Do you think you can get away with this?
What are we supposed to do now? Hearing the yelling from the other end of the line, I couldn't help but sigh.
What the hell did I do? You guys are the ones who ruined everything for us. What are you saying? Barging into someone else's home and making a mess, not contributing to the household expenses, bullying an old woman like me, was it fun? Call me every name under the sun, I don't care. Damn it!
John grunted in anger, and I couldn't help but chuckle. They probably never imagined for the house to be gone. Just the thought of them standing in front of an empty lot dumbfounded was cracking me up.
Mom! What the hell did you do?
John passed his phone to his wife. I remembered her smug smile when she poured wine on me, and felt nauseous.
It's my house and I'll do as I please. It's none of your business. It totally is my business. We lived here too. It's our home as well.
Huh?
Our home? You never helped around the house, or paid any bills. How dare you claim it as your place? Besides, I know something about you, Catherine.
What?
You quit your job quite a while ago, didn't you? Or were you fired? Either way, it doesn't really matter. Yet you leave home every night you saying you're heading to work. What have you been doing exactly? You're cheating, aren't you? Want me to tell John about this? What did you say?
She didn't deny it, so I guess I was right. I had a hunch that Catherine has been cheating for several months now. She comes home from work at odd hours every day, and I started to notice a peculiar smell of perfume on her laundry, but she never wore them before. She might be able to fool my stupid son, but she can't fool me.
You can't just run away when things get tough after all the things you did to us. Get out of my place right now. Fine, I get it. There's no way I can live in this dump anyway.
Sounds like she has given up. With a rustling sound, she seemed to be leaving the lot.
Hey, where are you going? I can't stay here any longer. I'm going back to my parents' house. Goodbye. Hey, wait a minute.
John's confused voice echoed. He had no idea he was being cheated on. When Catherine left, he took out all of his anger on me.
Old hag, what the hell did you say to Catherine? I only told her I would spill the beans about her affair to you. What?
The way my John fell apart after that was terrible. Unable to accept the reality, he cursed and shouted harsh words like,
Shit.
and
Why the hell?
then he started yelling at me.
How could you do this to me? I'm your son, for God's sake. You took it too far.
After all the things he did, my son was still trying to play the victim. I started to feel bad for him, he's so pathetic. But that doesn't mean I'm ever going to live with him again.
My son? You're no longer my son. Oh, and one more thing. What? Your phone contract is about to end soon, so this really is our goodbye. Huh?
My son couldn't even breathe right and just gawked. I had cancelled my son's phone contract, which he had made me pay since he moved in. The contract ends this month, but today's already the last day of the month. From tomorrow, my son's phone will be useless.
Now I can finally cut ties with you. Goodbye. Hey.
Without waiting for a reply, I hung up the phone. I felt all the energy drain out of me in an instant, and I slumped onto the sofa. My husband said, "Good job," and brought me a warm cup of tea. Finally, I can sever ties with my eldest son. Just thinking about it seemed to heal all the hardships I had gone through. A week later, our intercom rang. I went up to check the intercom screen and saw my second son. The screen lets us see who's at the door without even leaving the comfort of our living room.
Hey, Mom, it's been a while.
Well, if it isn't James. So nice of you to visit us. Come in. As I reached to press the open button for the door, a gruff voice suddenly commanded,
Move it. Finally found you, old hag. Open up now.
To my surprise, John popped up, even though we never gave him our address. I wondered if he hired a detective or something.
Open up? I bet you're just here to try and steal some money. Just leave right now. Ha, keep talking like that and you'll see what will happen to this guy.
John took out a blade that looked like a knife from his pocket. The sight made me shriek in fright, but I was more worried about James being in danger. I needed to do something quickly.
Bro, what are you doing? You've been looking down on me. An office worker, you said. You make me sick. Bro, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Leeching off of mom and dad's money, living like a parasite. You son of a...
Oh no, James is in trouble. Just when I blanked out in fear, I heard the blaring sirens of a police car, followed by the sound of heavy boots approaching.
We're arresting you for attempted murder. Come with us. Hey, wait, what the hell?
Through the screen, I saw John get taken down by the police, with his knife still in his hands. That's as far as I saw. I'm guessing that the neighbors called the cops after hearing the commotion at our place. According to James, his brother had a crazed look in his eyes, barely recognizable as his brother he once knew.
Mom, sorry it's late, but I'm getting married. Oh, really? Congratulations. Thank you.
Receiving such joyous news from James, my husband and I were overwhelmed with happiness, and we celebrated the occasion by having a feast with him. I am more than satisfied with just this child. Our eldest son can live his own separate life. My husband also seemed relieved that we were finally free of him. After that, John was taken by the police, and it was discovered that he had committed other crimes like theft and intimidation. The duration of his imprisonment is yet to be decided. Of course, he lost his part-time job. I felt profound sadness, wondering where I went wrong in raising a child who would resort to such crimes. Even though Catherine went back to her parents' home, it seems her irresponsible lifestyle hadn't changed, and I heard rumors that she was kicked out of there too. Turns out that the man she was having an affair with was married with kids, and she's now being sued by his wife. It's a disaster for her, but it's karma. Of course, John and Catherine had gotten divorced. I have stopped thinking about John, and I'm moving on, heading towards a new future in our new home.
Mom, this is Rachel. She works as a pharmacist at a pharmacy near my workplace.
Hello, mother-in-law. Nice to meet you.
Rachel, nice to meet you too.
The fiancé James brought home, Rachel, was a 32-year-old woman, polite, intelligent and instantly likable.
It's going to get busy, isn't it? But I'm looking forward to it.
James, Rachel, my husband and I all had dinner together, sharing laughter. One day, we'll gather around the table together again with our grandchild. Just imagining it was a beautiful scene. My daughter Emma was getting married, and we were off to a family meeting. When we entered the designated room, Phil Henry and Mil Lauren were already seated. They looked like they were in the middle of a conversation, smirking unpleasantly. Looking at the table, I noticed that only 3 settings were prepared on our side. I realized this was their sly way of harassing us. Please, take a seat. Oh, just the 2 of you?
We're a single mother household,
I replied, lifting the corners of my eyes, trying to stay calm. But Lauren let out a mocking laugh. Oh, that's right. Maybe you should take this in a food storage container? Single mothers are poor, right? Lauren covered her mouth, trying to suppress her laughter. Despite her harsh words, I kept my expression unchanged. Seeing enough, Emma tapped my shoulder.
That's awful. Mom, let's go.
Why leave? If it means you, who've sacrificed everything for me, have to suffer, I'd rather not get married. Touched by Emma's kindness, I smiled. It's okay. Just wait a bit. Then, an employee came from behind with a food storage container. Here, please take this home. He offered to Lauren. Henry and Lauren were taken aback, stunned. If being poor is about low income, please, take it.
Huh?
My name is Rachel. In my 50s, I feel like I've reached the midpoint of my life, living in a slightly spacious single-family home with my daughter, Emma. When Emma is at school, I sometimes feel a pang of loneliness in the quiet of our living room. That's when I make it a ritual to prepare 2 mugs of tea, one for me and the other for my late husband, Nathan. Pouring tea for Nathan. And imagining he might be with me brings comfort. Nathan was diagnosed with cancer about 20 years ago and passed away suddenly as we were about to start his treatment. On his deathbed, he implored me to take care of Emma. She must become someone admirable. At that time, Emma was too young to remember much about her dad. To fulfill my promise to Nathan and to prevent Emma from feeling lonely or sad, I raised her single-handedly, balancing work, household duties, and parenting. Despite being a single mother, I managed to send Emma to college. Emma grew up to be academically excellent, beautiful, and a genuinely kind and wonderful woman. She's my pride and joy. After graduating, she got a job and started living on her own. I can't always rely on you, Mom. It's time I do something in return for what you've done for me. Don't worry about me, just do your best. Eat properly, don't stay up too late, and come on, I'm not a child anymore. What are you saying? You'll always be my precious child. The night before she moved out, Emma and I stayed up late, talking about the past, the future, and about her dad. We never ran out of memories to share, losing track of time. Even after Emma started living by herself, she would send various texts to my mobile phone. She would complain about unpacking, cooking, training at work, and colleagues. Each text made me feel as if Emma was right beside me, probably feeling lonely in her new life. But as time passed, the texts became less frequent. I assumed that Emma was finding her own way. I guess Emma is doing well. The lack of texts seemed to prove that Emma's days were fulfilling. And even the tea I brewed for Nathan seemed to nod in agreement. A year and a half after Emma started her job, I received a call from her. She sounded happy.
It's been a while,
She said.
Mom, there's someone I want you to meet next Sunday. Do you have some time?
Oh, it's been a while. Yes, I do have some time on Sunday.
Then, I'll come home on Sunday. Is noon okay?
Yes, that's fine. Be careful coming here.
It's been a while since I've seen you. You'll be surprised. Bye.
After saying that, Emma hung up, and I stared silently at the screen. I wondered how long it had been since we last talked on the phone. Her unusually happy tone over the phone intrigued me, but when Sunday came, I was indeed surprised, just as Emma had said. At the door was Emma and a young man named Ryan. Ryan was not dressed casually, but in a casual suit, looking slightly nervous. Nice to meet you. I'm Ryan, and I've been seeing Emma for a while now. Ryan, who introduced himself, was tall with features like a movie star, and came off as a very polite and good young man. Nice to meet you. Please, come in. After inviting them into the living room and making tea, we sat at the table where Emma gave an update and introduced him. Then, Emma said shyly, "So, Mom, the reason I wanted you to meet him is because we are thinking about getting married." Married? Though I had anticipated it, the fact that Emma had found someone still surprised me internally. I kept my composure, looking at Ryan, who now had a more serious expression. Yes. I proposed to Emma recently, and I wanted to meet you, her mom. I paused for a moment before responding, and I said, I see. I didn't know Emma has been seeing someone as wonderful as you. Ryan, Emma doesn't have a dad, and I raised her by myself. Yes, Emma told me she grew up in a household without a father. Emma is my treasure, my precious daughter. Can you promise to protect her and make her happy? Of course. I am confident that I can make Emma happier than anyone else in this world. Ryan answered firmly, without flinching at my stern attitude. Had he hesitated, I might not have approved of their marriage. All right. Please take good care of Emma. Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other, relieved, and smiled happily. Seeing them like this made me smile too. I think Nathan would have smiled in the same way if he were here. Months after sending off a happy Emma and Ryan, Emma took a long break and came home. She happily talked about her work and Ryan, but occasionally she looked troubled. When asked, she'd quickly change the subject, saying, "It's nothing, Mom." Whenever Emma wants to talk about something or lies, she shrugs her shoulders. This time, Emma did it again, so I was sure something had happened.
Hey, Emma. How about we try that new place? It's a brand new cafe here.
I showed her the screen of my mobile phone. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the cafe.
I wanted to go there. The coffee is popular, everyone at work says it's good. Then it's settled.
The next day, Emma and I walked to the cafe. After ordering coffee to go, we walked for a while. Mom, thank you for accepting my marriage with Ryan.
He seems sincere. Take good care of each other, Emma.
When we reached a large park, Emma started to talk. Actually, I went to the in-laws' house. I feel like I'm not well liked by them. Emma's story went back a month. When she visited the in-laws' house, Henry and Lauren seemed skeptical at first glance. Nice to meet you, I'm Emma. I'm dating Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. Are you sure about her?
Lauren interrupted Emma's greeting. What do you mean?
Well, she looks rather plain, doesn't she?
Her clothes, her makeup, it all screams poverty.
She doesn't match you at all.
Without a word of congratulations, they blatantly insulted Emma.
Mom, that's rude. You shouldn't talk about my girlfriend like that.
Don't you think so too? Lauren sought agreement from Henry, who was sitting next to her, and Henry nodded in affirmation. Ah. Is your family that poor? Do your parents work?
My mom works, and my dad passed away when I was young.
Single mother, huh?
I figured as much.
Henry said with a strangely satisfied look and scoffed.
Dad? It must be for the money. We come from a respectable family. You should stay away from a woman like that. How can you say that? Emma is not like that. I know her best. Ryan just doesn't realize yet that there are many who would want to marry you for our assets.
And then, he even suggested introducing Ryan to a daughter of an acquaintance. Lauren agreed with this proposal, pleased with the idea.
That would be better. After all, we know someone respectable who works for a major company. Not a match for a single mother's family.
Don't you think so, Ryan? Seeing Lauren happily agree, Ryan raised his voice.
Enough from both of you, Dad and Mom.
The conversation went nowhere, and Ryan and Emma left the house. Ryan later told me that Henry and Lauren have a strong sense of elitism. Emma, I'm really sorry. My parents said such awful things and hurt you. Emma was apologized to multiple times by Ryan, who promised to always protect her. Sitting on a park bench listening to this, I had to suppress my anger from exploding. So, what do Ryan's parents say about the marriage? Last week, we went to their house again. We faced some snide remarks, but Ryan convinced them, and they agreed to our marriage. Are you okay with that, Emma? Emma bit her lip and shrugged. Yeah, it's okay. We won't be living with them, and I can endure it. Is that so? It was clear that the relationship between Ryan's parents and Emma was strained. Even with Ryan's protection, there would be limits. Knowing they would face hardships, I wished I could advise them to reconsider the marriage. But having already given my blessing, I couldn't say that. Even in this short time, Emma looked downcast. Thinking she might always look this way saddened me. So, about the family meeting, I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't go. Why?
If it's going to make you feel bad, Mom, I don't want to have the family meeting.
Emma's eyes seemed to well up, even though she didn't cry. She was considering my feelings. Touched by her kindness, I smiled. Don't worry about me. Let's have the family meeting so that everyone can acknowledge your marriage. Under the cold sky, Emma and I sipped our cooled coffee on our way home. When Emma told Ryan she wanted to have the family meeting, he was very surprised. And he kept worrying about her, saying, "You don't have to push yourself. I'm fine. Mom says not to worry. If you say so, I'll talk to my parents about it." And so, on the day, Emma and I went to the venue. Though we didn't say anything to each other, I decided to stand tall and face them with confidence. We took a cab to the hotel, and both Emma and I took a deep breath at the entrance. But Emma looked anxious. When Lauren specified this hotel, she made a snide remark.
It's that famous hotel you see in commercials. A place your family wouldn't be familiar with.
Emma took it to heart and became completely intimidated by the unnecessary comment. I gently pulled Emma closer by the shoulder, signaling with my eyes that everything would be okay, and we started walking together. We ran into Ryan at the entrance. He seemed to have arrived earlier and was waiting for the elevator.
Thank you, Emma and Rachel, for having time today.
Ryan appeared much more nervous than the last time we met, sweating on his forehead despite it being winter.
No, thank you. We have been looking forward to today. You might have heard from Emma, but this hotel is where my dad works.
Ryan seemed uneasy and worried about his parents possibly saying something offensive, given their behavior in front of Emma. I responded confidently.
Yes, I'm aware.
No need to worry.
Ryan, you look better when you're confident.
As Ryan looked up, the elevator doors opened, and we stepped in, riding up to the higher floor. Upon entering the room, Henry and Lauren were already seated, seemingly in the middle of a conversation, smiling creepily. Noticing that 3 sets of tableware were prepared on our side, I realized it was their sly form of harassment.
We've been waiting for you. Please, have a seat. Oh, just the 2 of you? We're a single-mother household.
I replied, lifting the corners of my eyes, trying to remain calm. But Lauren let out a mocking laugh.
That's right. Maybe you should take this in a food storage container? Since you're poor.
Huh?
Single mothers are poor with low income, right?
That's right.
The income of a single mother is predictably low.
Lauren covered her mouth, trying to hold back her laughter. Despite their harsh words, I remained expressionless. Unable to stand it, Ryan cried out.
Dad, Mom, stop it. This is too disrespectful.
At that moment, Emma tapped my shoulder.
That's awful. Mom, let's go.
Why?
If having me means you suffer, Mom, I'd rather not get married.
Hearing this, Ryan turned around in surprise.
Emma.
While watching them, I clearly said,
It's not necessary. Just wait a moment.
Then, an employee came from behind with a food storage container.
Here, please take this home.
He offered to Lauren. Henry and Lauren were taken aback, stunned.
If being poor is about low income, please, take it. Huh? At least Rachel is far from poor.
I firmly stated, and the employee, with efficient movements, placed the container down and stepped back, leaving Henry and Lauren outraged.
Is this some kind of disrespect? That's it. You're fired. Both of you, please calm down. She's been a friend of mine since childhood. The rudeness is on your part.
The employee turned back to me, smiled briefly, and said,
The division manager always seems so busy. Division manager?
Lauren and Henry gasped, tumbling out of their chairs like in a cartoon. Henry was sweating not just on his forehead but all over his face. Though it wasn't my intention to hide it, I am the daughter of the president of the group company that owns this famous hotel. I've worked for this company for many years, continuing even after getting married without resigning. When I was pregnant with Emma, I took the same maternity leave as other employees and raised Emma while working in Nathan's stead. By the time Emma entered college, my efforts were recognized, and I was promoted to division manager, unbeknownst to Henry and Lauren.
Are both of you okay?
I addressed Henry and Lauren with a composed voice as they lay sprawled on the floor.
Today, we came here for the family meeting regarding the marriage of my precious daughter and Ryan. It seems you have had quite a bit to say to my daughter.
I glared at them, causing Henry and Lauren to tremble and shrink back.
I've worked hard to provide love and education for Emma since her father, my husband, died from illness when she was young.
Ryan swallowed hard.
I believe in Emma, and I trust the person she has chosen. Even if he comes from parents who judge people by their income and are rude, I see Ryan as a polite and respectable young man, an important new member of our family.
I paused for a moment before continuing.
I would think you feel the same about your children. So, I ask again, do you approve of my daughter's marriage to Ryan?
The room fell silent, with Henry and Lauren trembling. And Ryan looking nervous. Emma had never seen me take such a stance before.
How about it?
I pressed again, and Lauren, looking frustrated, glanced at Henry. Henry, pale-faced and flustered, hurriedly said,
Of course. Director, we hope for a closer relationship from now on. Today, I am here not as a director but as Emma's mother.
I stated firmly, looking at Henry.
And if we're talking about work, isn't it true that Henry will soon be leaving here? What do you mean?
I had investigated Henry's reputation within the company up until today. Knowing Emma's dad was Henry, I remembered his name. His condescending attitude towards Emma and his notorious behavior among hotel staff were well known. Henry was infamous for his high-handed behavior towards subordinates and was reported to be avoiding work under the guise of attending meetings. A hearing had been scheduled to address these issues.
So, that's what it is. You should reflect on your actions.
I left Henry speechless with my rebuke. Lauren stood up, face red, and lunged at me with a screech. However, I dodged, and she fell over. To the fallen Lauren, I delivered my final statement.
And know this, if you ever interfere with Emma and Ryan's happiness again, I will not remain silent.
With that, I firmly addressed the two, then led Emma and Ryan out of the room. Of course, I left the follow-up to the employee who has been a friend since childhood. Half a year has passed. The heat is relentless for someone in their 50s like me. The weather forecast predicts another scorcher today. As I walked to the supermarket, I thought back on the events. After the family meeting, Ryan apologized to Emma and me numerous times.
I'm really sorry for my parents' rude behavior.
It's okay. We've seen your sincerity.
I'm truly ashamed. I don't want to associate with parents like that anymore.
But they're the ones who raised you, right?
No, it was my uncle who raised me. My parents left me with him until I was a college student.
I had secretly wondered why Ryan's demeanor was so different from Henry and Lauren's arrogance. Understanding it was his uncle who raised him made sense. Ryan recently cut ties with Henry and Lauren after they approached him for money. Following the family meeting, Lauren called in a panic.
Ryan, your dad lost his job. He was subjected to an internal hearing for negligence, making no sense at all.
Ryan responded indifferently.
That's tough. What do you mean, acting like it's none of your business? We're struggling without money, send us some. Mom, I heard about your spending habits from my uncle. You have a problem with wastefulness. What are you talking about? Maybe if you stopped wasting money, you'd have enough to live on. Don't rely on me. Such unnecessary talk.
Then again, there were several calls, and Lauren had run through her savings due to her spending habits, even going as far as to say that Henry's retirement allowance was running out. Struggling to make ends meet, Henry and Lauren did not just ask for money but also reached out to me, wanting me to connect them over the phone. Morning, noon, or night, they didn't care when they called, which finally seemed to make Ryan explode in anger.
Dad and Mom, please, enough. I don't want to trouble Emma or Rachel either.
With that, he hung up the call and set Henry and Lauren's number to be blocked. Not stopping there, Ryan changed his mobile phone number and moved to a new apartment with Emma, changing their address. Of course, this was not communicated to Henry and Lauren, who remained unaware of Ryan and Emma's whereabouts afterward. Nothing stood in the way of their happy married life anymore. From what I've heard from Emma, they have been living peacefully since then. As for me, I've managed to maintain a good relationship with them, dining out with Emma and Ryan monthly. This incident made me realize a huge misunderstanding on my part. While I worked hard, thinking I was doing my best not to trouble Emma and raised her, I had completely stopped going on trips, which was my hobby. It seems Emma believed she was the reason I gave up my hobby, thinking my sacrifices were because of her. The efforts I made to spare Emma any hardship or worry ended up worrying her instead. From now on, don't worry about me. I want you to use your time and money for yourself. Until Emma told me this, I was enjoying living by myself at home, but afterwards, I started traveling more on weekends. As someone who loved domestic trips, I began visiting places I had wanted to go and places that held dear memories. And strangely, working hard daily made me feel it was okay to spend money and time for myself. Moreover, exploring the latest hotels started to benefit my work. Projects and such began to progress more smoothly, bringing me luck. As I thought of Emma's influence, I finished paying for my shopping and left the store. Today's shopping was for groceries to cook dinner together with the three of us. Glancing up, I saw Emma approaching from the opposite direction. "Mom, are you okay? Don't strain yourself, let me carry that for you." Emma hurried over and effortlessly took the bag from my right hand.
Oh, thank you. Shall we go then?
Yes.
Ryan said he'd come over as soon as he's done with work. He's looking forward to your chicken dish,
Emma said with a smile.
We'll need to make plenty then.
Recently, we received wonderful news that Emma is pregnant. Ryan, Emma, and of course, I were all delighted. I'm planning a surprise for Emma and Ryan, looking forward to sending clothes and toys for the grandchild, though it's a secret from them. While I wonder if it's too early, I know before long, the child will be born. Though this new life has just been conceived, I'm already eagerly anticipating the day I can meet them.
Here, this is for you, Mom.
Emma said so, but then in the next moment, she flipped the stew onto the floor.
What?
It was the first time my son, Michael's family had come over to our house. I was preparing dinner with Stella, my daughter-in-law, and Emma, my 3-year-old granddaughter. But then Emma, instead of placing the stew at Stella's seat, deliberately spilled it on the floor. It wasn't because she tripped or slipped. She clearly did it on purpose.
Wasting food like that. Why would you do something like this?
I couldn't help but scold Emma harshly.
Because I thought it was easier for Mom to eat.
Startled by being scolded, Emma said, crying and shaken.
Easier to eat?
I couldn't believe Emma's words and unconsciously repeated them.
Mom always eats on the floor. What do you mean?
Sobbing, Emma tried to explain. Hearing Emma's surreal words, I looked at Stella to question her. Seeing Stella with a pale face and her shoulders shrunken, I felt she was hiding something.
Good morning.
Today, as always, while looking at the portrait of my deceased husband, I greeted. I have been living alone since my husband Ian passed away a few years ago. The expression on Ian's face in the portrait is grumpy, with a deep furrow between his brows. Thinking back, I hardly ever saw him smile during his lifetime. Our marriage was arranged, and from the beginning, we were careful with each other. We barely spoke, each of us strictly keeping to our roles. A happy marriage seemed far from achievable, and we never went out together even on holidays. At that time, I didn't have friends to call my own, and of course, it was a time when there were no mobile phones, so I came to think that's just what marriage was. Ian would lock himself in his room or go out alone on weekends, coming back late at night. And sometimes we wouldn't even talk at home, always an icy atmosphere prevailing. Yet, my in-laws were persistent in wanting to see a grandchild. Suspecting illness due to the lack of childbirth news, they urged me to go to the hospital repeatedly. Ian, for his part, seemed annoyed being nagged, shared the bedroom with me just for one night. Luckily, I became pregnant and decided to pour all my love into raising the child. Ian showed no interest even as my belly grew, mercilessly assigning me household chores even when I was immobilized by morning sickness and wasn't even there for the birth of our child. When I was too exhausted and asked Ian for help, he dismissed me by saying he was busy. However, when our son Michael was born, Ian changed as if he were a different person and actively involved himself in parenting. For the first time, Ian suggested we go shopping together with Michael.
What kind of picture books should we read to Michael?
I couldn't hide my joy and spoke to Ian more than usual.
Wouldn't this outfit look nice on him?
Contrary to my excitement, Ian still had an angry look. He hardly responded and dismissed all my choices with a sigh and told me that he would decide everything. I wanted us to cooperate in parenting, but Ian rejected everything I tried to do or say.
Only a man can understand what a boy needs.
And eventually, even when feeding Michael, he said he wanted to focus on the meal, so he moved to a separate room. Ian was quite strict about everything from how to hold a fork and a knife and to the order of eating. It took 6 months before Ian approved of Michael's eating manners and allowed him to eat with me. The first time I saw Michael eat, I was astonished by how neatly he did it. He never complained or showed weakness, focusing solely on his studies and not playing with friends.
Michael, well done. Why don't you take a break sometimes?
I tried to comfort Michael with some cake as a snack while Ian was away.
Sweets aren't good for the body.
He refused without even glancing my way. As Michael entered high school, he joined the baseball team, wanting to train his spirit, and became a star pitcher of the team. Even after that, thanks to his disciplined effort, he tackled everything with all his might and graduated top of his class from a prestigious university known for its difficulty. Raised by the strict Ian, Michael grew up to be so graceful in his movements that people passing by on the streets would stop and stare. It seems he was even approached by several women for dates. I once saw Michael sighing to himself.
Michael, isn't there someone you're interested in? I find it more meaningful to spend my time honing myself, rather than romance.
His response to my casual question was marked by an even deeper sigh. Eventually, Michael made neither friends nor lovers, always a lone wolf, establishing himself as an object of admiration from afar. After university, he landed a job at a major publishing company, enviable to many. The publishing company kept him busy, and Michael lived a life of constant business trips, hardly ever returning home. He woke up early every morning and returned home on the last train. With such a lifestyle, he had no chance for encounters, dedicating his days to work alone. Even the formidable Ian would be asleep by the time Michael came home, so I secretly prepared snacks for him.
A man's body is his capital.
Ian had always fed Michael a perfect meal of one soup and one dish, and so he was forbidden snacks, especially midnight snacks. However, no matter how balanced the diet, it was clear that the hard-working Michael was gradually losing weight due to insufficient nutrition.
He's going to collapse if he keeps this up.
Michael initially refused the midnight snack, wanting to go to bed early. But one day, after exchanging such words several times, Michael's stomach growled loudly, cutting off his words.
"The stew is ready." I said, "I want to go to sleep." "See, the stomach doesn't lie,"
I gently told Michael, who turned bright red and looked down.
"Is it really okay for me to eat?" "Of course. I made it for that reason. Thank you."
With a slightly trembling voice, Michael carefully brought the spoon to his mouth. Then, with his spoon in his mouth, Michael froze.
"Michael, what's wrong?" "It's delicious."
It seemed the taste was shockingly good for Michael. He devoured the steaming stew, even asking for seconds. After finishing 3 plates, Michael showed a smile I had never seen before.
"Ah, this is the best feeling. I didn't know there was something this delicious. You've worked hard every day." I'll prepare a snack for you tomorrow night too.
From that day on, Michael began to eat the midnight snacks I prepared with curiosity. Thanks to that, Michael's weight returned to normal, unbeknownst to Ian. The time for midnight snacks, the only time Michael and I spent together, became the time I also looked forward to as well.
Mom, what's for tonight's snack? Tonight, it's ramen. Ramen. I've been wanting to try that.
For Michael, who had never eaten out, the midnight snacks I made were all first-time experiences. Every time, Michael would light up like a child and eagerly eat up the meal. And so, seeing Michael off to work in the morning as usual became part of my daily routine. Michael, having regained his health, made significant progress at work, becoming regarded as the star in the company. This led to a series of invitations from women, it seems. Seeing this, Ian, perhaps unable to stand it, recommended an arranged marriage, and quickly, the discussions concluded, and Michael ended up getting married without any prior dating experience. Michael married Stella, a woman who worked as a secretary to the president of a famous company. Though she was of a quiet demeanor, she appeared to be a polite, serious person.
I am inexperienced, so I ask for your kindness.
At our first meeting during the introduction, Stella greeted us politely, a rarity these days.
I will do my best to be a good wife and support Michael.
Stella smiled softly, narrowing her beautiful eyes, and I thought she looked as beautiful as a blossoming flower. We're going to be family, so don't hesitate to rely on us for anything. Happy as if I had gained a daughter, I exchanged contact information with Stella and told her so. Stella, coming from a family that lived a bit far away, nodded happily to my words. Thank you very much. It's very reassuring. Then, the newlyweds moved to the neighboring town. Anticipating they might have a lot of unfamiliar things to deal with in their new life, I decided to frequently send messages via mobile phone. However, when I asked if they needed any help, Stella, who was already domestic and skilled in household chores, seemed to have quickly won over Michael's heart. It appeared Michael often had to go on business trips due to work, but they seemed to get along well, going shopping together on holidays. Not only that, but Stella also took care of me by giving me candies when I had a sore throat or recommending a good plaster when I mentioned I had hurt my back, always considerate towards me. She would quickly reply to my messages, so I thought there was no need to worry. When I told Ian about Michael and Stella, he nodded as if to say, of course, making me completely at ease.
I'm happy to see them so happy.
Michael and Stella were blessed with a daughter named Emma in their 4th year of marriage, bringing me great joy. And I think even Ian softened a bit. However, life doesn't always continue happily. Before Emma turned 2, my Ian suddenly collapsed. Ian, who had lived a life rarely seen smiling, seemed to have been unknowingly harboring stress. By the time he was advised to be hospitalized, it was too late, and cancer had spread throughout his body. And so, Ian passed away, leaving us behind. After the funeral, as I started living alone, messages from Stella, which used to come frequently, gradually became scarce. Even when I offered to help with childcare, I was gently refused, not wanting me to go through the trouble. It started after Ian's funeral. Stella suddenly began acting strangely, and when I inquired about Emma or their life, her responses were curt, and sometimes there was no reply at all. She wouldn't answer phone calls, and I worried every day. Feeling the distance between Stella, Emma, and myself, time passed, and before I knew it, Emma was 3. Thinking at least for Emma's 3rd birthday, I decided to send a message about having a meal at my house.
Happy 3rd birthday to Emma. Have you gotten used to parenting?
Yes, thank you. It's been a while since we've seen each other. How about a meal at my place? No, thank you. Stella's cold reply made me sigh.
I haven't had much to look forward to since I became alone. I want to celebrate my first grandchild's 3rd birthday.
After sending such a message, perhaps my feelings got through, as she curtly replied, "All right, we'll go." I had doubts about Stella's sudden consent, but the joy of meeting Emma soon dispelled them. And finally, the day of the family meal arrived. Stella, it's been a while. I greeted Stella and her somewhat tense family with a smile. "Sierra, it's been a while. Thank you for inviting us today." Wondering if they were nervous after such a long time, I let them into my house.
Come on, Emma, say hello to Grandma.
Emma, who had been shyly hiding behind Stella, came forward quietly when encouraged and bowed politely. "Grandma, hello." Contrary to Stella's uneasy and somber demeanor, Emma greeted me with a bright smile. "Emma, hello. I made stew today, let's eat together."
Yay! I love stew.
It was the first time I had seen Emma since she was just a baby. I was worried she might be shy, but Emma's cheerful and innocent demeanor lifted some of my anxiety. However, Stella, hunched over and unusually vigilant, was not the Stella I knew. She used to be considerate and attentive to her surroundings. While I was concerned about Stella, I decided to wait and see, understanding she might have things she didn't want to talk about.
Where's Michael?
Stella, looking unsettled, scanned the inside of the house.
Oh, Michael will be coming directly from his business trip, so he'll be late. I received a message. Stella, you didn't know? That's right. I'm sorry, I might have missed the message.
Stella seemed relieved for a moment and hastily checked her mobile phone as if to hide her expression. I'm sorry, I had a message too. I can't believe I missed it. I feel like a failure as a wife. Stella's blue face and the way she berated herself seemed excessive to me. The message had just come in, so there was no need to worry so much. However, I didn't press further in front of Emma.
It's not your fault, it's okay. Sit down, and I'll reheat the stew.
Sorry. Her voice was so low I had to ask again.
Stella, did you say something?
Nothing, it's nothing. Stella seemed even more withdrawn, making me feel she was hiding something from me. It was just a hunch, but these intuitions often prove correct.
I'll help you carry it.
Emma ran over with an innocent smile, cutting through the tense atmosphere.
Oh, thank you. But stay back from the stove, it's dangerous.
Emma's offer to help was impressively mature for a 3-year-old. Stella, meanwhile, sat down hesitantly and stared solemnly at her spoon.
Here you go, be careful, it's hot. Okay.
Emma energetically took her plate and slowly walked over to Stella. And then,
Here, this is for you, Mom.
Emma said, and in the next moment, did something unbelievable.
What?
Emma deliberately spilled the stew on the floor instead of placing it at Stella's seat. It wasn't because she tripped or slipped. She clearly did it on purpose.
Why would you do something like this? Wasting food.
I couldn't help but scold Emma harshly.
Because it's easier for Mom to eat.
Surprised by the scolding, Emma said, crying and shaken.
Easier to eat?
I couldn't believe Emma's words and repeated them unconsciously. Mom always eats on the floor.
Eating on the floor? What do you mean?
Mom always eats on the floor because Dad makes her. Emma tried to explain, sobbing. Hearing Emma's surreal words, I looked at Stella, who was trembling and pale.
Stella, what's going on?
Just as Stella was about to speak, the doorbell rang, and Michael appeared at the entrance. Despite the awkward timing, I quickly cleaned up the spilled stew and welcomed Michael in.
I'm home. Did something happen?
Michael seemed puzzled by the delay between the doorbell and the door opening.
Welcome back. I couldn't leave the stove.
I tried to act normally, hiding my agitation.
I see, is that stew I smell?
Yes, your favorite stew. I felt relieved I had made stew and breathed a sigh of relief. Unaware of anything, Michael cheerfully entered the living room, ignoring Stella's distress and sat down with a thud.
Nothing beats Mom's stew.
Michael spoke loudly while Stella bit her lip tightly. Feeling the tense atmosphere between them, I forced a smile, struggling to maintain a facade. I was skeptical about Michael making her eat on the floor, but I sensed their relationship wasn't good. The conversation remained superficial, the stew tasted bland, but somehow, the meal ended peacefully. After the Michael family left, I messaged Stella about the incident. The only reply I got was "It's nothing." It can't be nothing. I murmured quietly to the mobile phone screen, reflecting on our interactions. Stella's messages have been cold lately. The distant replies didn't seem like they were coming from the caring Stella I knew. Thinking about the incident made me wonder if Michael was controlling her phone.
I can't overlook what just happened. I need to check on things myself.
With that thought, I decided to visit Michael's house. Even though it's spring, it was already dusk. I shivered in the cold air as I approached their house. Just then, I heard a loud argument.
It's your fault. What?
That was Michael's voice. Panicked, I pressed the doorbell. Michael, with a forced smile, greeted me.
Mom, we just said goodbye. What brings you back?
I need to talk to Stella.
What? Well, Stella's tired from the visit. I'll pass the message.
Michael blocked my way, visibly flustered.
This is an important matter between women.
My firm tone left Michael with no choice but to let me in.
Stella?
Looking around inside, I noticed the bathroom light was on.
I'm going in.
As I headed to the bathroom, Michael hurried after me, panicking.
Stella's in there. You can't go in now.
But I entered the bathroom before Michael could stop me. And what I saw was unexpected.
Stella!
Stella was in the shower, drenched, sitting on the floor.
Sierra. I was cleaning the shower and accidentally turned it on myself.
Stella weakly smiled as she spoke to me.
This is terrible. You'll catch a cold.
After finding a towel, I wrapped Stella in it, drying her hair and arms.
I can't believe this. Sorry, Mom. Stella always messes up when I'm not watching.
Michael didn't even attempt to get a towel, instead crossing his arms with an angry look. Stella was in a daze, quietly letting me help her. Seeing Stella's slight shivers, I couldn't deny Emma's words were true.
Stella, I've dried you off somewhat, but you need to change immediately.
Sierra, I'm sorry. Thank you. Always like this. Stella can't do anything without me. Michael complained, but Stella's fear was evident. Pretending to use the bathroom, I discreetly called the police, and soon the doorbell rang, signaling their arrival.
Who's that?
Michael answered reluctantly.
We received complaints about loud noises from this house.
The officer said, to which Michael lied about a misunderstanding. The officer insisted on speaking with us after checking the neighborhood.
Today's a bad day.
Scratching his head, Michael opened the door. 3 officers entered swiftly, one securing Stella and Emma while the others restrained Michael.
What?
Michael resisted desperately, but the officers were unfazed.
What the hell? What did I do?
He knew he couldn't fight off the police, but he still tried to make himself loose. To that the police said in a low voice,
If you don't calm down, you're obstructing the execution of our duties.
Michael turned pale and suddenly became quiet. Meanwhile, Stella, overwhelmed by the sudden events, saw the subdued Michael and burst into tears. Looking at me and the officers, she spoke quietly. I can't take it anymore. Stella revealed her pent-up frustrations.
As soon as we got married, he submitted my resignation without my consent. I protested to the CEO, but no one believed me.
Rumors had spread that Stella complained about her low salary and was unhappy with the CEO, none of which were true. Ultimately, her resignation was accepted despite her objections.
Life became hell after I became a housewife.
First, her mobile phone was taken away. In her unfamiliar married life, it seems Stella had many things she wanted to discuss with me or her parents, but Michael wouldn't listen.
Especially about meals. Whatever I cooked was always criticized as bad. I wanted to ask Sierra for recipes, but was told to figure it out on my own.
At first, it was just verbal criticisms, so Stella thought she could bear it.
Things got worse when Emma was born. He did help with childcare, but...
Michael appeared to be a kind and good father to Emma, but his verbal abuse towards Stella in her presence increased. After Ian passed, the harassment intensified. Verbal abuse became a routine. Stella was ordered to eat meals on the floor and endured days of being overworked by Michael. When they went shopping, she was only allowed to buy what Michael specified, limiting her outings to the bare essentials. Any slight dissatisfaction from Michael, like a lightly cleaned area or a wrinkled shirt, resulted in Stella being doused with cold shower. Using water as a means of harassment left no physical marks. I had no one to turn to, it was so hard. Tears fell again from Stella's eyes. She confirmed my suspicions of her suffering under Michael's harassment. You've been enduring all alone. It must have been so hard. I regretted not noticing the signs earlier. As I comforted Stella, I reflected on my actions. Michael faced interrogation after everything was revealed. During the interrogation, Michael sat arrogantly, denying any wrongdoing. An officer, unable to overlook Michael's behavior, pressed him hard. Why Stella acted fearfully around Michael, and the reason Emma naturally spilled the stew on the floor were questioned. Even without visible marks, harassment traces could be investigated with modern medical technology, the officer sternly stated. Finally cornered, Michael confessed. I've been under a lot of stress. Michael murmured as if speaking to himself. He resented the strict discipline enforced by his father since childhood. He was strictly told about the order of the meal he ate and the right size he was supposed to eat in one bite.
You can't even do this.
Harsh scoldings for minor mistakes were part of his upbringing. Forced to learn kanji and English at a young age, Michael was made to revise tirelessly for any mistakes. In elementary school, while peers enjoyed games, Michael was sent to unwanted lessons and cram schools. He revealed his dissatisfaction with all of it. In high school, he was forced into a strict baseball team, despite having no interest.
The first time I played soccer during a break, I found it incredibly fun, but my father never allowed me to switch to the soccer team.
I was shocked by Michael's words. I trusted Ian to take care of meals in another room, never questioning it, and rejoiced at Michael's academic and extracurricular diligence. All the times you were working so hard, it wasn't because you enjoyed those activities. I didn't know Michael loved soccer and I was unaware of his interactions with Ian. I was just preparing lunches every day without knowing anything about my family. I had no idea you felt that way, Michael. It's natural for you not to know. He said it was a man's promise and made me keep quiet. Michael, adeptly trained mentally, easily maintained composure without my knowledge. He didn't enjoy studying either. He was restricted from popular student activities like gaming and fashion interests. And even his love for sweets was limited. Ultimately, an arranged marriage decided by Ian added to his growing resentment. Having the marriage arranged without his consent, Michael seemed to have started feeling indifferent about everything. Even after getting married and moving away, the pressure of being married to someone chosen by Dad made him feel monitored, and the curse lifted only after Dad's death. I became obsessed with the idea that Stella should strive just like me. That was how Michael concluded. I thought I had raised Michael together with Ian. I had no inkling Michael was enduring such hardship behind my back. The guilt and powerlessness overwhelmed me. Despite Michael and Ian keeping silent, I bear responsibility for not noticing. Stella, this isn't something an apology can fix, but it was my fault for raising him poorly. I'm truly sorry. No. I'm the one who should apologize for not being able to heal Michael's heart. Stella's words, ever so kind, made tears spill from my eyes. Stella, you've done nothing wrong. I'm truly sorry for everything. Afterward, Michael was arrested for assault. Having shared his burdens, he seemed somewhat relieved. He will now have time to reflect and make amends. Stella decided to divorce Michael, taking Emma back to her parents' home.
Sierra, thank you for everything. I haven't done anything worthy of your thanks.
I decided to support Stella and Emma financially in Michael's stead. Initially hesitant, Stella accepted after I expressed a desire to maintain a good relationship.
I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. I'll always consider you as my family. Thank you. Having a relationship with you and Emma is a great comfort to me.
Stella, having settled into her new life, seemed to regain her bright smile. I regularly received photos of Stella and Emma. She also invites me several times a year to visit Emma. Sierra, would you like to come over sometime? Emma misses you. Seasons have cycled through peaceful days since the incident. Emma started going to elementary school and even visited my house alone.
Exactly, Emma, you're doing great.
I was teaching Emma how to make hamburgers during one of her visits.
Grandma, this is fun.
Emma showed a carefree smile, shaping the hamburgers perfectly. Indeed, it's fun. It'd be nice if Mom could join us next time.
Yeah. I'll make a lot.
I deeply cherished these moments of happiness. Relieved that Michael hadn't inflicted lasting wounds on Emma, I wished for her to always be smiling. As we placed her small hamburgers in the pan, her eyes sparkled with anticipation for the completion of the meal.
May your life be filled with smiles from now on.
I whispered, as if making a vow.